Ahoy! The New World team did a pretty big info dump on us today, including a more official version of the map where we can see some more details, a new article, and some other new information. We are going to start quickly having a look at the map here, but we'll go more into detail a little bit later when we can zoom in on this. This is what the more official version of the map looks like compared to the hidden version that we had before. We can kind of see the outlines here of the other zones, so the measurements pretty much line up with what I was expecting, and we can see various structures across here now, which we'll get into a little bit later. Before that, there are some other news that I want to show you. One of the new characters, presumably an NPC that we'll be dealing with in some capacity, has been shown. The announcement here is Cutting Through the Darkness with Elegance and Pride, and Cecilia will meet you in Nighthaven. Now, I can't tell for sure what role this character will play. Based on the appearance here, I'm assuming this is going to be a quest giver or something. It doesn't look like a villain of sorts, so I'm not expecting this to be an enemy, especially when I'm also saying Cecilia will meet you in Nighthaven. So what exactly that will imply, we'll have to find out, but this is one of the first new NPCs that we're seeing. There's also been an announcement that is not just for the expansion, but also for now. Healer role balancing has been added to PvP mode matchmaking for Arena, CTF, and OPR. They say that previously they found matches based on a minimum or maximum number of healers per team, which could lead to longer queue times and could result in lopsided matches. With the addition of role balancing, they're now comparing the difference in healers per team and can form matches either with no healers or a guaranteed healer on each team in the case of arenas, or in the case of OPR and CTF, they'll allow for a minimum of one healer per team with a maximum allowed difference of one healer between teams. These are the values that we're starting with, and they'll be monitoring it, and it can change it later if necessary. However, I am a bit unsure about how this is going to work exactly, because if we're just going by people queuing as healers, that is easy enough to sort out, I guess, and you can compare those, but people could very easily exploit that system, because you could queue as a tank or DPS, and then once you're in the match you could switch to healer gear, and I'm not sure if anything is actually stopping you from doing that, and that way you could give your team more healers and you could make it unfair for the other team if we assume that healers are such a big problem, which I think most people do consider to be the case. And I don't know if that's in any way prevented. Like, the only way that I could see that being prevented is if you block people from equipping a life staff once they've entered OPR or something. I'm really not sure. I haven't switched gear in OPR in ages, I'll be honest. I don't even know if there are any restrictions to it currently, but as far as I'm aware, they're not. So, yeah, I'm not really quite sure what way this will be enforced, basically. And that is a bit of a concern to me, but I'm glad that they're generally introducing a system like this. I think generally this is a good thing. I just hope that they factored that in somehow. There is also a new oldish leak, I guess. Somebody on Reddit, Revolutionary Tip 70, found a new instrument being listed for musical performances, and I think this has shown up before. I feel like I have seen this in the past, but it showing up so close to the expansion I think is interesting, is noteworthy. Maybe there is something here, maybe we might actually see a new instrument. If you're finding this information so far interesting and useful, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell if you want to get updated about more New World content. Also, if you'd like to support me further and get early trading tips, you can do so on Patreon. Now, next we have a massive article here that gives us a few new hints at various things that are coming with the expansion and how the zone might play out and what we'll come across there. But first of all, we have a larger version of the map right here, where you can see a little bit more of the original map, and I've also loaded that into another program so that I can look at it a little bit closer. So this is the version that we're going to be looking at, and I have a few spots that I'm very interested in. Now, the first spot that you will recognize that I already talked about is down here. This very clearly looks like a war camp with the 3 pathways leading there. So this new zone will be one that can be contested. You can claim this zone, which also means there will be housing and everything else that comes with that. There will be a reputation for the zone and all that. So I think that is exciting. I think most people like that. And we'll find out what the vampire housing actually ends up looking like. Could be very nice. I don't know how dark and grim the towns themselves will be, because we've seen different parts of the zone looking very differently. So it could actually be in the apple orchard area or something as well. That is something we'll learn about later, but for now we know that this can be contested, and this will probably be fought over a lot because everything will be done in the zone for a while by most players. Now, in terms of other spots, there are some more interesting places. One spot that was already interesting to me before was this top left area, which has the path just leading there, and then it kind of just stops. And even now we can see here that this logo, the Nighthaven logo, is kind of overlaying this corner of the zone, making it a bit foggy. So I'm not even sure if we're going to be able to access it, but there seems to be something in there. I don't know if this is some kind of like just swamp area, or if this is actually a structure of some kind. I think it's not, because there's this river going into it as well. But this looks suspicious in a way still, and I don't know how this will be used. There is this thing which like looks vaguely like a massive coffin. I don't think that is on purpose, so I think that just happens to coincide in terms of shape, but who knows. We have a very, very big area down here, which could possibly be the new town. It could be this cathedral that we already saw in one of the teasers. It could be that this is where we're going, or it could just be a very big elite zone, because it seems to connect to various other areas as well. So both absolutely possible. Again, I would love to know for sure where the new town is, but a lot of places here that are very connected. You have this area as well, could be the new town. It would also make sense because it's pretty close to where you come into the zone. But it could also be the area over here, all the way to the left. It could be a bit more secluded. So yeah, many, many possibilities. We see some other interesting spot. There seems to be some kind of well or something going on here. This reminds me a bit of the mother well. So maybe a continuation of that of some sort. And something over here that's built over the pathway. And yeah, many, many more scattered areas. We have another darkish area that looks similar to this one, which is down here. Again, might be some kind of swamp of some kind. And then we also have these outer areas here, where you have one path leading over to one separate island and another one over here. Again, this could be elite zones. I'm thinking this could be something like Isle of Zervin, for example, which is also a bit separated and has like the bridge going over it and everything. But very, very hard to tell with many of these spots out here what they may be for. What we can see overall is that there are a lot of different structures, which means a lot of points of interest. With like compared to Brimstone Sands, we'll say like this looks a lot empty. Okay, you can't really see the structures very well with this coloring, unfortunately. But generally speaking, this looks like a very dense zone with a lot of different things to do within the zone, which, given its size, means it's probably going to have a decent amount of content to do. Now, I have no idea where the raid or the catacombs or things like that are, but when we get into the article, they do kind of mention that some of these things may be under other things. They were under the zone somewhere, so they might not even be visible on the map. You might find the entrance somewhere and you have to go down to a cave, and that's how you end up there. So again, could be up here as well, for example. But yeah, I think the map looks very interesting so far. There's a lot of nice different spots here to explore for sure, and I'm very excited for it. Now let's have a read through the article itself and see what information we can get from this. This is obviously a little bit lore focused, so if that's not your kind of stuff, feel free to subscribe at this point if you haven't yet, and click off if you just don't care about this kind of thing. But there are some hints in here at least at how things were going to go, so I wanted to talk about it. The Chronicles of Nighthaven. Nighthaven, long since whispered to exist, reveals itself like a full moon beyond a pale night cloud. I'll tell you the tale of Nighthaven as my Baba once told me every night before I lay my head to sleep. The land is ruled by its domineering king with an ill-tempered fist. The populace and peasantry serve the crown, gutted both by the unfair taxation and the horrors of the dimly lit woods which engulf it. Nighthaven's currency is not just gold and wheat by the barrel, but nightmares and dreams and memories that fade to wisps. Charms, totems, and talismans guard the doorframes of every villager, patient for the relieving chime of a bell's new day. For there are secrets darker than the imagination that lurk behind the corner of your eye. The traveling troupe of the Grand Carnival leads a rebellion stashed away in the deep recesses of the territory. Hidden from the aggressions of the ruling house and its lower court, House Valem, House Bathory, and House Carmilla. At this point, some quick notes. The Grand Carnival, probably related to these clowns that we already saw some gifs of, some little teasers. And these three houses, Valem, Bathory, and Carmilla, all seem to be somewhat connected to real things that exist as far as I was able to find. So for House Valem, that seems to be related to a monastery, whereas House Bathory is related to a very, very cruel, I think, ruler of a place, that a woman that was known to kill many, many people during her rule. And then House Carmilla is connected to the story of another woman who is a vampire. So of course, some of these names may just be coincidence, but Bathory in particular may be well familiar to anyone familiar with heavy music, so I don't think this is a pure coincidence. These few oligarchs who command the rabble are just as vicious in their rage as they are in their gluttonous everyday excess. Servants of the castle rich speak in hushed tones beyond cold steel gates and dark dungeons, willing to look past the atrocities committed in the dead of night for a few more coins or for a few more days of sanity, whichever is needed most at the time. The capital of the realm, the king's own castle, expands on the horizon as if a great wailing behemoth. Impossibly immense, a man-made mountain that grips the mind in its lavishness and enormity. A castle keep that swallows the horizon like the whale swallowed Jonah, but without the promise of God's return or saving. Once the castle has claimed you in its bowels, you are nothing more than another fixture, another book of memories lodged on a dusty shelf to never be remembered again. The king's castle is a fortress that is said to be as wide as it is tall and burrows just as deep as its towers grace the moon. And standing in it all, the great reminder, the clock tower, a looming and ever-present monument to the truest of secrets, that eternity is not forever. Death comes for us all, even in eternum. Baba said there once was the promise of a nation now steeped in misery, and none can look further than the abandoned villages, farmyards, and animal pens of the small folk of the manor lands. Their daily toil and the sweat of their brow feed this nation, yet the pigs, chickens, and cows are not the true livestock. Deep in the hinterland, a bounty amasses of perfect pumpkins and golden apple orchards. Left untended, these wild sprouts give way to wild things. The forests run red with persistent fall colors to the north, to High March, and these perfectly splendid colors soon fade along the borders of cursed woods and tumbling sorrowthorn briars, thick enough to strangle the reindeer that still call this land their home. Wild and dangerous, the cursed woods are home to apocryphal beasts that walk on two legs like man, but are urged by a mammalian instinct of true predation. This is likely the same enemies, the Corvid enemies and so on, that we're seeing in the Angry Earth expansion in the Elysian Wilds. Nighthaven is full of secrets, Baba says. So many secrets hidden beneath the surface, like flesh-eating ticks hiding underneath your skin. For all its liminal shades, the crust of Nighthaven and the overworld are but fleeting, like ghostly dancers still stepping to the music unheard. But Baba said Nighthaven is a carcass, and the worms and maggots below are the real Nighthaven. Endless miles of catacombs, caverns, caves, and crevices are the permanent home of so many fresh and unsightly horrors. To step into the underworld below Nighthaven is stepping into your own doom. If the risen dead or the madness of ghosts cannot claim you, then the eight-legged children of Utu certainly shall. Eight-legged children, spiders, probably referring to the raid here, but there's also the word catacombs mentioned specifically, so maybe both of these things will be in the same area. But what saving grace is there to run from these terrors, these soul-wrecking phobias? Baba says there is hope if you cling to the towers that dot the land. Rising above the darkness, as if built as a means to escape the thickness of the dread below, you'll spot dozens of safe places above the tree line. Like the jagged teeth of a rabid beast, the towers of Nighthaven promise sanctuary if you can decipher their ruined magicked stones. These places are infused with the magic of the old ways, but they can betray you if you do not master your own mind and memory. Shadows of the past will rob you of your senses if you cannot withstand the torment of your own mind. This to me sounds like a brimstone-like system with the glyphs where you can unlock these towers somehow after solving whatever trickery is afoot, and that will allow you to maybe unlock more chests as well if there's a new chest run, something along those lines. Baba also says there was once a group of people who tried and failed to cut down and burn back the horrors of Nighthaven. Their shrill cries and religious text and fervent dedication to their church were their sword, their shield, and their sanity. But after marinating in so much hatred and rage, they lost the latter and became just as mindless and corrupt as the terrible things they swore would be eradicated. And now their story is just another red brushstroke on the canvas of Nighthaven, their angels fallen and their priest inflamed with an unconscious need to destroy. Like all things, Baba says, all things in Nighthaven are to be feared. Fear is what keeps us alive, fear is what keeps us moored in our own minds and not lost in the ocean of darkness, the moon our only loose connection to what is real and what is not. In Nighthaven, you cannot trust your own eyes or your own thoughts, but you can trust your own fear. So, lots of hints in there. I think I kind of touched upon most, but generally some hints at how things will be looking in the new zone. That is all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Again, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. If you'd like to support me further, you can do so on Patreon. Thanks to all of my patrons who do exactly that, and thank you for watching. Sloth, out.